There we go. We are live. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. And this Wednesday webinar is absolutely 100% different than any of the other webinars that we've done because normally everyone that hires us, it's entirely confidential. And I was on a plane to Thailand about a month ago, and I'm sitting on the flight and I'm reading, I think it was Inc. magazine, and I see Brennan there. And Brennan has allowed me to tell you that he is one of our clients that we helped him with his Amazon account. And at the time, he was all of 16 years old and absolutely killing it. And fast forward, a couple of years later, he's in Inc. magazine. I mean, just killer. So Brennan, if you don't mind, introduce yourself. Tell as much as you're comfortable telling about your business and how you met us and what we did for you and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, so thanks for having me on. But yeah, so sort of like you mentioned, I started 4 or 5 years ago back in 2013. And I started basically figuring out how to print on socks. And that just started because I was so sick and tired of kids at my school. They were wearing like the same 4 color of socks every day. And I was like that one kid that kind of had to have something different. Figured out how you print on socks. I ended up buying a pair for like $50 online. My parents thought I was like crazy for buying these socks. And then I get them, and then my friends were asking for them. So instead of like referring them, I was like, they don't cost $50 to make. Like, let's figure out how I can do this myself, because I wanted more, my friends wanted them, and it really was like a desirable product. And I'd been selling stuff on eBay since I was like 7 years old. So I sort of had like the concept of how to do e-commerce a little bit. I mean, I didn't really know, but I had an idea. So I ended up developing some samples, found a local guy to make me some, sold them on eBay, proved this business concept, and then ended up, once I had like proved it, buying my own equipment to produce them on my own.
Wait, stop. Hold on a second. So let's slow it down a bit, okay? So at 7 years of age, okay, and I've also had the pleasure of meeting and working with Brennan's dad. At 7 years of age, he's on eBay selling products. Like, you are what I want my boy Max to do, okay?
So I was a weird kid.
So now at the ripe old age of like 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever you were, right?
13.
Now, how old?
13.
13. At 13, right? He's proving a business concept, okay? And buying his own buying your own $50 socks by itself is really cool, okay? My 14-year-old is still asking me money for the vending machine, right? And so now he's proving a concept, works, finds a source, finds a manufacturing, right? And this is like, he's barely a teenager, okay? So I recognize that your mom and dad had a lot more to do with you, and your effort had a lot more to do with it. But I'm just psyched that I was able to participate at all. So let's start now when you are all of like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah. So I'm 15 or 16 now. Like, I've sort of been selling these socks for a year or two, nothing too serious. And then I launched it on Amazon. And so when I first launched on Amazon, like, that was a huge sales channel for us to start out. I mean, in comparison to what we were doing outside of that. And so then that's sort of how we came across meeting you. So it was like, my business is so seasonal. Like, we'll do 60, 70, 80% of our sales in just November and December. There's about a 30-day period because socks are like the #1 Christmas item every year, just is. And so we were selling, it was all going great. We were doing a bunch of revenue on Amazon. And then one day we get like this email, and it's like, sorry, you've been like shut off. And they didn't really explain anything why. This was like the first time anything like this has happened. And I was just like, uh-oh, like, this is really, really bad, because here goes all my revenue from like my highest, like, this is when I make all my money for the year, is these 3-4 weeks. And all of a sudden 90% of my revenue has just been shut off. And so I was freaking out. I mean, I was like 15 and 16. So I was still maturing, trying to figure out how to like actually handle this situation. And so we started reading up online, like, what do we do? Like, has this happened to other people? So sure enough, it has. And they were basically like, they're not going to tell you what you did wrong. You kind of have to figure it out. But I didn't really have time to figure it out, because we're, again, losing revenue every day. And so that's sort of where we ended up meeting you. Was, I think you were like the first thing that was showed up on Google for like, when we started searching this, there was some info out there. And so then we ran across you, and it looked like you might be able to help us. So I remember we contacted you on like day 4 or 5 of being shut down. And then by day 6 or 7, I believe, like, we had drafted this email and sent it back, and we finally got back up. And like, I was so relieved, just because the fact that I was able to sell again, right? Like
let
it
me
sucks
let
that
me
we
let me take it back to our perspective of it, okay?
yeah.
So we get a call. I don't know if it was an email or a call. I end up talking to Brennan, and we're calling back. We're very interactive. We deal with all the sellers we're working with, and I keep calling first thing in the morning, and I'm dealing with your dad, who I thought was like a business partner. And it's we do a lot. We deal with husbands and wives that are partners, parents and children, just regular business partners, buddies who are business partners, and so Brennan is never around. And his dad keeps saying, you got to call back after 4. You got to call back after 4. And I'm like, why? Where's you? How come I can't reach before 4? He's like, he's in school. And I'm like, oh my God. He's in college. He's getting his master's degree. And his dad's like, no, high school. So
yeah, no. Scheduling was always rough throughout high school. I'd be like, I can't take calls before I start sitting in English class. But
I think you should have been able to. Like, I think you should have been able to take calls. You were killing it. You probably still are killing it. And now let's fast forward, and I want to loop back again, okay?
Yep.
Fast forward to tell me about the article about you. Let's talk about you and how successful you are. And I'm hoping that your story will help other sellers also be successful, okay? So
totally.
Tell us currently, where is HoopSwagg?
So HoopSwagg right now, last year we did about $1 million in revenue, and then this year on track, hopefully hit somewhere between 1.5 and 1.8 million in revenue through all of our different income streams. So it's really good. Like that's growing decently fast, and it's been cool to work on it full time now. But to sort of get back to how that article came about a year and a half ago, I ended up getting all this. Like we ended up on the front page of CNN. They did this article on us that was like 17-year-old sells $1 million in socks. And I had never even like done any sort of interview before. And so I do this and I'm like scared, but we got it over with. And then everybody else started picking up the story. And so now I've sort of become like this authoritative like face in the idea of like youth entrepreneurship in the media. Like I get featured in all these sorts of articles and stuff. And so I never like, it's all been online though. And so I did this interview a few months ago, and I didn't think that it was Entrepreneur Magazine. I don't think they had done anything with it because a lot of times people do interviews or whatever, and like they just never end up getting published for whatever reason. But I get this Snapchat from my friend, and he's like, "Dude, I think you're in a magazine," and which was like must have been what you saw. But he sends me the Snapchat, and like sure enough, like there's my face on like a magazine page, which was super cool, and it's been cool to be able to like get recognition for that. But at the same time, like there's so much that's gone into that. Like it's not like it just happens, like I work a lot, and like everybody that helps me, like my parents both work for me full time. We've got a team that does production. And so there's so many pieces that go into it that like no one would ever know about. That's on the back end. So like it looks really cool when you get an article like that, but it's also like that's been like 5 years of hard work and probably not sleeping enough. So
I got to tell you, I think it's great that you don't even recognize like how awesome you are. Okay. And how unusual you are, and the hard work. I know you put in a ton of work. You go to school and you're working afterwards. And I think it is. I mean, it's incredibly inspirational to young people and older people, what you did, that you found a product that you were spending money on. You're like, I can do this better. I can do it, and I can sell it, and I can make the markup. So I think it's really cool. So let's ratchet it back a bit. Let's talk about nuts and bolts. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your particular product. It's sort of the process that you followed to grow your business, to get to the point of success where you are.
Yeah. So I think about this a lot because I'm always like, I can't ever stop thinking about starting new stuff. Like I always have ideas, and when I start to boil down, like what made me successful, I think number one was like, I had a product that not only I loved, but like there was demand for it. It wasn't like I was going out there and being like, hey, I think this product's really cool. Like you should buy it. I had people asking me and begging for this product, right? So before I even did anything, I basically had proven the fact that people wanted this product. And I see this a lot of the time with my ideas that I have, or like I've got friends that try to start stuff on the side, like from high school. And like a lot of it's like, hey, I'm going to go sell this t-shirt. And it's like, no one wants your t-shirt, right? So there's like something unique about the product. And I think once you sort of identify what that is, and so for me, that sort of changed over time. When I first started, it was the fact that these socks existed at all. And now that's sort of transitioned into the fact that like my socks sell themselves because the designs, they're unique and no one else has them. And the sock itself is like really high quality and no one else on the market makes the same type of sock. And so for me, it's sort of shifted over time. But I think a big part of what, especially with physical product, you have to have something that makes you unique, because the reality is there's like thousands of other people out there selling the same exact products, right? And there's still people selling socks out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of companies, but it's able to like, how you're able to differentiate yourself and like from a buyer's perspective.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think that's vital, especially as competition has gotten hotter and hotter and hotter. And what I also realized, warming up for this webinar, my team, which is mostly younger than me and mostly older than you, right? Half of the guys are really into individualized socks.
Yeah.
Right. And me, listen, I go to the Kohl's and I got the same black sock with the gold toe, and I buy like 30, 40 pairs at a time, so I don't got to match them up or anything. I'm pushing 50, but it's like you are selling to the top market. It's the millennials, and it's great. They're into socks, and you're still, a good, 10 years behind them in terms of years, but you're calling on the market. That's the hottest market that's out there with big margins, and it's just great. Tell me about how you've grown in terms of like the production and your staffing, because I find here, as we've grown, we're now all over the world. Okay, we took one of our key people in New York, and I shipped them over to Australia so we can cover the different time zones. But the management curve, I'm a great lawyer. I kick ass in arbitrations. Okay, I'm good at speaking, I think. But in terms of management, to me, that's been a big challenge. So tell me about the challenges you faced as your business has exploded.
No, totally. And it's funny you say that, because you can be good at so many other things, but to be completely honest, the management and the growing of like my infrastructure has by far been the most difficult thing in my business. Like at the end of the day, like if you don't have that, you have got nothing. And especially like I started hiring people when I was probably 14 or 15. And so like, it's really weird to think about. There was a point where like most of my employees were like 3 times my age. And so it was definitely difficult. Like I've never worked for someone. So not only do I like not have the experience of how that relationship goes at all, or how any of that interacts, but like they're also 3 times your age, which is just like a little bit weird when people are like, yeah, my boss, he's like a sophomore in high school. But no, I mean, it's been huge for me. Like I've learned that people are my business, right? Like if I don't have the people and we don't have like a good company morale and that sort of thing, like it doesn't exist, because at the end of the day, we're manufacturing. But to be able to grow that, like it's been as great as it sounds to be like, okay, we're going to go hire 20 people, buy all this equipment. At least the way that I've grown my business, it's been very slow and steady, but making sure it's sort of built the right way. And so like during Christmas, it is a little bit rough, because we'll go, like I said, we do like 70% of our sales. So we have to hire a whole bunch, like we're about to do this the next week or two, hire a whole bunch of basically temporary people through like December 25th or Christmas. And you have to train them and make sure they know how to do everything, which is really difficult. But just like the sheer fact of upgrading equipment and all this stuff, and the process for at least making socks, which I know is really specific, but it's constantly evolving. Like it's not ever like we've been doing the same thing for 2 months or more. Like it's always changing. And so sort of staying up to date with that and constantly looking at where your pain points are or bottlenecks are within a process, and looking to cut those out. And also, again, just for me, like learning the people skills side of it, and how to manage people effectively and like how to help them be successful versus just sort of like trying to tell them what to do. It's definitely a learning curve. But
I gotta tell you, we use a business consultant that help guides us, and she's a personal friend of mine, which is really cool. And I find also like making sure you're hiring the right people is difficult. My wife joined us recently as our HR department to help us hire the right people, as opposed to people I just sort of clicked with, which is not always the best. Training, increasing maintaining the culture is, I found, to be really challenging, where we had a couple of toxic people, and really maintaining the culture becomes more and more important as you get larger, because you got to keep everybody psyched up and everybody into what they do, and everybody happy. And also, listen, letting people go sucks. So I'm sure when you have these temps that even though you're up front and they're working through the high season, letting them go, I mean, that sucks.
Yeah, 100%.
So what type of, as you're growing, you're hiring, you're expanding in the high season, you're contracting, you're investing in business, right? You're maintaining the culture of HoopSwagg and the environment, right? And you must also be doing product development. mean, that really, between the entrepreneurial skills and IDing the products. And again, don't reveal your products here, okay? I don't want to reveal the next great widget. I want the widget to be yours. How are you teaching yourself, and how do you keep your mind open, and what do you read and what do you look at?
Yeah, so for me, the whole concept of like learning and constantly like improving myself has been huge. Because when I really start to like, again, break down what I've done up to this point to make me successful, it's always been when I'm learning or creating. And so whether or not it's super effective, like I'm constantly learning stuff. So like whether that's, and this is within like every aspect of my business. So like I end up learning a whole bunch about like graphic design or like web development, all this different stuff. It doesn't actually matter what it is. It's like the overarching concepts of this that'll like open up my mind and be like, I have some really random thoughts where like I'll be doing something like coding a website and I'll have some idea for how you could like a new product or like how something else could work better. Like I've just found for myself that I become like most effective when I am learning. Like it just opens up my mind in whatever state that puts my mind in. That's where I've become most effective. But in terms of what I look at, I definitely try to stay up to date with like a lot of the trends and stuff. Like the whole fidget spinner thing from like a year ago, like that sort of stuff. I'm always trying to stay up to date with. I don't really want to get into it, but it's always good to see like, because the way that these consumers are now buying things is constantly evolving, right? With like Facebook and all this different stuff, all the new stuff they're adding, and just like the psychology behind how people are buying things. And especially because like all my friends are 18. So I think I get the most out of talking to them about what they're buying on Instagram. Is like super interesting to me because it's like, that's exactly who I'm trying to sell to. And then I'm like sitting on a couch with these guys, like trying to get in their head, figuring out why they do what they do. And then sort of breaking that down, and figuring out how you can like reverse engineer to sell things to them. But
I think that's really cool because, the rest of the world, right, is out of high school. Right. And congratulations, you graduated, right?
Yeah, I graduated.
All right, graduated like in June, right?
Yeah, a few months ago.
So congratulations on graduating high school. Like the rest of the business world, right, is trying to figure out what you and your buddies are looking at and watching and what you're going to buy. But you're in mesh. That is your world.
Exactly.
And I think that is really, really cool. What kind of advice would you give? And also, we have some viewers on. If any of you have any questions for Brennan, please just post them. I think I'll see them as you put them up there, and we'll try and answer them. What would be like some of the tips that you would give to people who are about to start, people who are sort of in the stream, and then also, I mean, listen, you're an advanced seller, okay? So give me like 3 different pieces of advice. The guys who are just looking at getting started, the people who are already a bit enmeshed, and for advanced sellers. What would be your top advice?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go. The people who like are about to get started. I think the biggest thing that you can do is like literally put up that listing. Like stop thinking about it and just throw it up, because that's when like I've been most effective learning is like when you do. And I still find this like today, like if you overthink something, you just end up like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it for this reason or this reason. Like it's all kind of mental. And so if you're able to just like take that first step, and even if it's like a little bit uncomfortable, it's gonna push you to a point where you take something away from it. And maybe you do that and you find out that like it doesn't work at all, but it's like better to figure that out now and then be like, hey, here's maybe why it didn't work, and then evolve on that, versus just kind of like waiting and waiting and waiting. Because like I still do that all the time. It's a problem. But like if you're able to just take that first step and be like basically non-judgmental of what you're doing, I think that's huge, because it's able to put you in a place forced to succeed, at least.
It reminded me of his saying. I'm a huge believer in this saying. I don't know who said it first, but the perfect is the enemy of the done, right? Like I'd rather get something done that's like good and not wait for perfect, because then you learn from it. And I think as entrepreneurs, which we are, you learn from your mistakes, and you learn even from your successes or your in-betweens as to how to make it better the next time around. So totally. I agree. I mean, if you're thinking about it, get in the game, start. I wouldn't mortgage your house on your very first product, but get in and start. Make a detail page, create a listing, source a product, totally. And start learning the system. Learn from your mistakes.
And yeah, it's so easy now, especially with all the resources we have online. Like you can do stuff at very little to no cost. Obviously there's some cost involved, but you can do it pretty low cost, at least to start out and test it before putting any real money into it.
All right. What about the sellers who are in? They've created a few listings. They've got a bunch of ASINs. They're sort of a little bit more than a novice, but certainly less than advanced. What do you tell sellers like that in that part of the growth curve?
Yeah. So I think a huge thing at that sort of point in time would be almost take a step back, because I feel like it's super easy to get sucked into exactly what you're doing, and being like, oh my gosh, like this isn't getting enough views, or like this could be wrong with my product. Like take a step back and look at it from like a much bigger picture. And so go look at like what your competitors are doing, and like sort of overall what the market is looking like. Because I know it's so easy to get sucked in and then start focusing on all these little details that probably aren't making that much of a difference. But if you're able to like take that step back and be like bigger picture, sort of here's my strategy, and just having a strategy in place for like at least knowing where you want to be. Because like if you don't know where you want to go, there's no way you could even come up with some sort of path to get there because there's nowhere to go. But just being able to like take that step back, look at things as a whole versus all these little tiny details. Like stop worrying about each tiny little product. And if you're able to like do that, I think that sometimes you'll run across things that are so like, again, big concepts that you could be completely missing, or like giant things from listings that are missing, whatever it is. Or maybe it's like you need a new product. Like maybe the market's evolving and everyone's sort of starting to get into this to service this new need. Like maybe you can come into a perspective. And so I think being able to sort of step back and look at things with fresh eyes is extremely important.
It reminds me of two things. We do a lot of videos. I'm doing more and more. And I'd read years ago this book called How to Make Videos That Don't Suck, right? It's an awful title, but it's a great book. And the same thing is like have a strategy, like have an intent. And your strategy or intent may not be right the first time around, and your product may have to pivot or change. But by sort of having a plan, you know where you're going. You can develop steps to get there. So I think that's huge, accurate, really, really great advice. And then be also open. I mean, by the way, I forgot to mention, like, I have never mentioned like, you by name or your product, but I have certainly mentioned you in speeches all over the world as like,
awesome.
We helped this 16-year-old kid. And I kind of imagined in my head, I was like, and I had a ballpark idea of what you were earning. I'm like, this guy has got to be driving on his driver's ed course in like a 911 turbo, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, he's not getting a killer apartment because he's only 16. He's living with mom and dad.
Yeah.
But I have mentioned you. But this whole thing, have a strategy, be open to change. Don't be married to a product, be married to the business.
Exactly.
And keep your eyes open. So I think that's great advice for sort of that mid-level seller, someone past novice but before advanced. And now what are you going to tell the advanced sellers? What advice do you have other than like hanging out with a bunch of teenagers again to really get their fingers on the market?
Uh-huh.
And don't be shy, dude. I mean, you have done it, okay? So what advice would you give to the advanced sellers?
Yes. So this is something that I'm still getting better at, but I really think that the most useful thing you could do once you sort of get to that advanced point, is like, I started to think about like, what do I spend my day doing, right? Because at the end of the day, we all want to grow our business. And the way to go about that is like, there's only so many hours in a day. So how are you able to like do this while growing your business? Because there's too many things like every day. There's never enough time, right? And so for me, that's been figuring out how I actually end up delegating things off. And so in my case, like, this is just my personal rules. Like if I do something more than 30 times a day, that needs to get passed on to someone else. Like I need to train someone else to do that. And granted, you have to look at your situation. Like you have to have the money and the cash for that to make sense. But that has sort of what allowed me, especially on marketplaces, like Amazon, to like take that next big step towards growing it even more, because now you can sort of remove yourself from the day-to-day process of like doing the actual clicking on everything, right? And you're able to focus on the bigger picture things, like maybe we should get into this product, or maybe we need to service to this need. But being able to remove yourself from the business, not only like it frees up your time, but it makes the business itself worth more. Because I've always thought about it like, there's the saying that like if you take yourself out of the business, right? Like if you just aren't there, is it still a business? And so basically making the business able to run on its own without you having to like watch it every second frees up a ton of your time, and like just it opens the doors to a whole bunch of possibilities for what could happen. And so I think being able to delegate effectively, whether that be with employees or like I use a lot of VAs to do this sort of stuff. I think being able to delegate and automate tasks that you might be spending a lot of time every day doing and spending that time towards something that's more valuable is definitely, for me at least, how I've been able to take that next step and scale.
I gotta tell you something. I don't mean to denigrate, other people or RAs or anything, but if you're doing the same thing 30 times a day and you're doing it on a scale of a 1 to 10 at like a 10, but you could delegate it to somebody else and they're doing it like an 8.5 or a 9, even though it's a little not as exactly as you would do it yourself, but it's getting done by somebody else. And then you can then focus on the bigger picture, being the captain of the ship. I think that's great advice also. I'd read this quote. I forget which book. It might have been the Pocket MBA or something, or What They Don't Teach You at Harvard or something like that, that as you grow and as the business, matures, you sort of want to extricate yourself a bit from working in the business to working on the business.
Exactly.
I always do both. I mean, I talk to clients every single day, but I also find myself, okay, what should I be exploring? Should I be exploring how we can deliver our services better and faster, to our clients, as opposed to talking to more clients? I don't think I found a good mix yet because I'm really still enmeshed. I mean, I talk to, I don't know, at least a dozen sellers a day. But it definitely is something as your business grows, to sort of focus on what you can give to others, what you can delegate, what you can use RAs for, what you need to hire people to do. And I think that's really, really killer advice. Really,
totally.
really.
And it's not like one or the other at all. Like you were saying, it's like working like you do both, right? I mean, I'm the same way. Like I love working in the business, but at the same time, sometimes you have to be like, okay, to take that next step, what do I have to do? But it's never like one or the other. It's always sort of finding that fine line of where that meets, I think.
All right, cool. Hey, what else are you comfortable sharing? What advice would you like to give other sellers out there? And it could be anything from like young entrepreneurs, who are looking at this. And I'm showing this to my kids later on tonight when they get home, all the way to the advanced sellers. What sort of departing advice would you like to give?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is biggest to me that I still make sure to do every day is just learning, like constantly be learning, be open to like things changing. This is so true with Amazon. Like I'm sure you have to deal with this every day, but like the amount of policies that change and all sorts of stuff that they just change on you. Earlier, I would get so mad every time they would change something because I'd be like, I have to go spend like 6 hours fixing this now. But being open to it and just like taking it head on and being like, okay, I'm just going to get this done. So just like, again, being open to change, and then constantly learning. Like, I think this is so important because there's things that I will go, like if I go to like a steel company, right? There's something that I can take away from that I can probably apply, or like a concept that I can apply within my business, because business is very similar on a larger scale, like between everything, right? It's just sort of different markets that are broken down, but constantly have your eyes open and like always look to take something away from whatever you're seeing or learning about. And then also like on a bigger level, like be extremely nice to everyone you meet. Just build good relationships. And I've seen this, especially like as I've sort of matured and been able to network with more people. Like it's been so extremely effective for me, just like by being nice to everyone and always meeting as many people as I can. It's opened up so many doors for opportunity that never would have previously been there. And some of like my best friends have come from meeting some random guy on a street that introduces you to someone who introduces. So like it's a never ending circle. And so always like looking for more, learning, and then just meeting new people and like building good relationships, I think is all extremely important.
I got to tell you, these are really, really mature concepts. Before solely focusing on Amazon sellers and intellectual property issues and plans of action, I was a hardcore trial lawyer, right? I was in there trying personal injury, medical malpractice, employment cases. I use those skills now for our arbitrations. And I remember going to a lecture in Atlanta, a guy named Russ Herman, a tremendous lawyer out of Louisiana, who pointed out to the group of like 200 lawyers that no one introduced themselves to the guy like pouring water and serving the lunch, right? And I think that's vital. I mean, you have to be a real regular person and respectful, and long-term relationships are really what things boil down to. So whether it's with your consumers, your suppliers, right, your employees, your staff, I mean, it really, I think, is vital. One, I think morally, to be a good person, you got to treat people, as you would want to be treated, and develop those long-term relationships. And it goes specifically to Amazon sellers and specifically to private label sellers. Like, you have to have a relationship with your factory. You have to have a great relationship with your designers. If you're sourcing in China, you have to develop that guanxi and let them meet and get on that plane and fly those 14 hours, and get there and do that face to face, put in that time. Relationships are absolutely key. Jenny, thank you very much. I put one of your posts up, and your other question, I'm a little hesitant to put it on the screen. I could also answer you privately. It's about a particular product and a particular product line. And so I'm happy to answer you privately. If anyone else has any comments or any questions for Brennan, please put them up. He's happy to answer them. But I think that is really a huge, huge takeaway. Relationships matter. Treating people well matters. That's kind of one of the things we do in our brand protection. Like, we never needlessly take a seller down. We always, if they're violating intellectual property rights, we give them the chance to amicably resolve issues. It's just, I think, a much better way of doing business.
Just doing things the right way.
Yeah, do it exactly. Do things the right way. Where do you go to learn, though? Like, are you going to, sellers events, retailers events, mastermind groups? Like, where do you get your new knowledge from?
So a lot of it is self-driven, where I'm like, I want to learn this, or like I was saying, it's graphic design or it's photography, whatever it is. Those are sort of harder skills. But a lot of what I learn actually comes from YouTube. I learn a ton from YouTube. There's so much content out there on the internet, right? There's someone that will teach you how to feed a lizard specific food. It's ridiculous. So sort of doing that, and it's funny because I'm not currently attending college, and one of the biggest things is sort of expanding your horizons. And so kind of learning all these random things. I got really into, for example, I get really into photography and videography now. Year and a half ago, I couldn't have told you that I even taking a picture on my iPhone. And I found that all through YouTube. And so that, and then also I was saying, meeting people, it's crazy. And especially in the business world, you get introduced to all these different people, you get invited to these events. And so I do my best to go to all of those because, again, what you were saying, you never really know who you're going to meet. And could I have told you that I was going to learn all about cryptocurrencies by meeting some dude at a young entrepreneur network? No. But I've learned all about the blockchain, cryptocurrency stuff now. And it's just you really never you're going to learn. And so again, reading all these news articles and sort of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to learn things that you might not know you had interest in, I think is huge. Because once you figure out something clicks for you, I really like that, you can go way more in depth, and then who knows where that's going to lead. It's just kind of opening all the doors that are handed to you.
All right. I think that's great advice, because we all have lots to learn. And I do believe the interest in cryptocurrency, for example, that then led you to blockchain thinking, will somehow also develop into how you run your business and who you grow into as a person.
Exactly.
So I think that's really, really great advice. And we also use YouTube a lot. Right now, my video shooting, I picked up this book, I'm watching other videos, they tell you what to look at, and you can learn from all different people in all different ways. So Brennan, listen, thank you so much for coming on. It sounds odd. I'm super proud of you, because I was involved when you were 16, although I guess at that point you're even in business almost 10 years. But I can't tell you how goofily psyched I was when I'm reading that magazine on a plane and I saw you there. I mean, that was one of my coolest experiences. I got to tell you something. And I'm just proud to have been even a tiny, tiny little bit of the role in the growth of HoopSwagg. And watching you. So, please keep me in the loop, and just send me an email as when you pick up the Lamborghini or whatever you do. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. No, it's been awesome to work with you over the past few years. And that magazine thing is just so cool. To hear a story like that, it's beyond awesome.
All right. I gotta do a little couple of promos. Okay. Before we get off. Okay. And under this, talking about continuing to learn, eCom Chicago is coming up. And I'm going to have my own group. It's a business development group there. If you email me, I'll send you a code to get a discount. But eCom Chicago is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's October 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's going to be really, really great. It's in a great city. I'm flying in. They're going to have private groups as well as kind of the typical lectures. And they got some of the top speakers, in the country or in the world who are going there. And also in Las Vegas, you have Retail Global coming up. I think that's a week or so before. Retail Global is going to have like 7 different tracks of learning. So I'd highly recommend, if you're in that part of the country, hit Retail Global. And most important to me is this foundation here. And you get the name up here. All right. And I'm going to ask you to promote this too, if you don't mind.
For sure.
Anyone who sells on Amazon, you also buy on Amazon. Okay. Anyone watching this video, you also shop on Amazon. And if you're not using the Amazon Smile program, you are leaving charitable donations on the table. It doesn't cost you anything as a consumer. But if you shop through Amazon Smile, you then get to pick a charity. This is my charity, okay? Ty was a little boy who was diagnosed with brain cancer at 3 years old. He passed away shortly before his 5th birthday. And his brother Lou is a fraternity brother of mine. Go ZB guys. And the brains of the outfit is his wife, Cindy. And they turned this awful tragedy of losing their son after a 2-year battle really into this triumphant, incredible organization called the Louis Campbell Foundation. And all they do is raise money to try and find better treatments and, God willing, find a cure to pediatric cancers. So please shop Amazon Smiles. Please pick the Louis Campbell Foundation. Every nickel helps. Every penny helps. And it costs you nothing. So Amazon Smiles and the Louis Campbell Foundation. All right, Brennan, dude, thank you so much for being on. It was awesome catching up with you, and definitely keep me in the loop in your success story.
Totally. Thanks for having me on.